A great day to everyone. So for today's video presentation, me and my co-members will be tackling the lesson 7, which is designing motor skills instruction session. So we will start to our first topic. Focus of attention. Studies examining the role of the performer's focus of attention have consistently demonstrated that instructions inducing an external focus are more effective than those promoting an external focus. An external focus facilitates automaticity in motor control and promotes movement efficiency. An external focus of attention should be used when providing instructions, with an emphasis on the outcome of the movement compared with instruction with direct attention to their own movement. Imagine kicking a ball instead of extend your knee more. Well, using an external focus of attention allows the process of learning to happen more quickly and can result in better performance by allowing the patient to develop their own strategies for movement. And for instance, focused attention are listening to a lecture, reading a book, watching a film, or making something without distraction. This level of focus allows the brain to take in the whole task without it being littered with a number of other thoughts and processes.
Feedback. Feedback, it refers to information an individual receives pertaining to the performance of a task. It is giving someone constructive feedback or constructive criticism to let them know what may be done to enhance a performance or products. So feedback generated from two sources, which are the internal or the task intrinsics and the external feedback. So when we say internal or task intrinsic, it is the information about movement, where we gain through sensory such as visual and auditory. Visual is something, picture or a short film, while auditory is the sense of hearing. The second source is the external feedback, referred to as argumented feedback. The second source is the external feedback, referred to as argumented feedback. This information is primarily used to enhance the first source, which is the task intrinsic feedback. Again, the two sources are the internal and the external feedback. Feedback has both an informational and motivating purpose, and both these functions are crucial for learning. In addition, the timing of the clinician's input can be during the task or after it is finished.
According to Weinstein Paul Lewis 1994, if feedback is repeatedly provided throughout a movement, it may hinder the ability of the learner to retain and successfully transfer the skills as they become passive participants whom reliant on feedback. So providing feedback is a well evidence and has a high impact on learning outcomes. Effective feedback tends to focus on the task, subject, and self-regulation strategies. It provides specific information on how to improve. So the amount of feedback should be reduced as the learner progresses through their rehabilitation by providing intermittent summaries of performance, gradually reducing feedbacks. Over time, only provide feedback if large error occurs or allow the learners to guide feedbacks. So knowledge of results augmented feedback that provides the learner with information about the outcome of a response and is concerned with the success of the intended action with respect of its goal. So according to Muratori 2013, internal feedback is providing information about the movement through sensory, visual, and auditory means. So it is the new knowledge that students generate when they compare their current knowledge and competence against some references information. So according to Muratori, Lemberg, Queen, and Duff 2013, less feedback is usually best. So for me, yes, because feedback promotes personal and professional growth.
Good day. Today we are going to discuss the classification of feedback. It consists of two types of feedback, which are sensory feedback and augmented feedback. And now let's begin with the sensory feedback. Sensory feedback is an umbrella term for all stimulus we receive in our body and make our body aware. So how this feedback is influence motor skills acquisition. Once a movement skill is performed, it is appropriate for the physical educator or coach to provide feedback to the students or athletes. Feedback refines the motor system by guiding the learner towards a movement pattern in a manner that promotes explicit self-correcting processes. For example, we receive the sensory feedback from several different places. This is called via or vision from our joints, ligaments, touch, pressure on the skin, and pain receptors to name a few. In theory, it is quite simpler. An input is enter our brain, which give an output in the form of an action, and there are two corresponding feedback, which are proprioceptive feedback and exteroceptive feedback. The first one is proprioceptive feedback. It provides a neural presentation of body mechanics to the central nervous system. This suggests an additional role of proprioception during movement, namely to allow the nervous system to identify the optimal mechanical pattern of moving during performance of a task. For example, perception is include being able to work or kick without looking at your feet or being able to touch your nose with your eyes closed. So the next one is exteroceptive feedback. So this is the outcome of the movement through the athlete's senses, observation of the outcome by the athlete, observations from the coach, observation via video. For example, the athlete's watching a volleyball tournament. The entire game, in that case, that the athlete is simply to observe what are strategies of that opponent on how they work and sees what strategies they're able to win on the next game, and also preparing what is needed on that game. So next one is augmented feedback. It is well known that motor performance it can be improved by augmented feedback. It's defined as feedback from external source and can be provided as knowledge of results or KR, knowledge of performance or KP, whereas the performer provides information about the movement outcome. Feedback about the goal achievements. The latter informs about the quality of the movement execution. A simple example is a coach giving the soccer player information about the position of her arm. During the backswing, when she throws the balls, the term augmented means that feedbacks come from external or supplementary source. So the role of augmented feedback in motor skill acquisition is that enhance the performance of well-learned skills, provide information that allows the individuals to determine how to improve performance in a specific context and situation. In augmented feedback, there are two corresponding feedback which are verbal and non-verbal augmented feedback. The first one is verbal augmented feedback. Meaning is that motor learning, musculoskeletal dysfunction, lower extremity, injury prevention. Exercise with external focus is more effective for motor learning in musculoskeletal condition. But it's unclear which modes are most beneficial. for motor learning. As an essential part of motor learning is neuroplasticity, which is the potential for the nervous system to change in response to sensory information. While much work has been done on motor learning in neurological conditions such as strokes, there has been less of a focus on the unimpaired brain, despite the healthy brain having a greater potential for change that to achieve the desired outcome such as motor learning. Feedback on performance of exercise is required because to enhance to motor learning, extrinsic and extrinsic approaches are advocated where the former is mediated through a individual sensory system. On the latter, the augmented feedback or AF, it involves an external source such as biofeedback instruments, a balance board, or external verbal instruction or cues. And now let's proceed the last feedback, which is non-verbal augmented feedback, meaning to say that when the coaches are fully provide the information about the skills needed to the athletes in a long time training or session, wherein the athlete, she or he already know how to a particular skills, like for example in volleyball, the coaches, it is not necessary to say what strategies they need on that game, but then they're just doing a sign of language by facial expression, using hands or body language, that's something different or unique way. But also during the game, the teammates, they just talk not verbal, they just using their eye contact, who are going to spike, in that sense that the spiker or she or he sense of the setter who gives the ball, that who are going to spikes. So the knowledge of performance are there because of the training sessions, and also the knowledge of results, which is the athletes are perform well, and that is the non-verbal augmented feedback.
Hi, good day everyone. I'm Abigail R. Francisco. So today we are going to discuss about practice self-control. So when you hear the word self-control, what comes to your mind? So when we say self-control, it refers to your ability to manage your behavior in order to achieve goals, improve positive outcomes, and avoid negative consequences. Self-control is an important skill that allow us to regulate behavior, and it is vital for attaining goals. While self-control is limited resource, there are things that you can do to improve and strengthen your willpower over self-controlled practice, including feedback, model demonstrations controlled by the learner, has been found to be more effective than externally controlled practice conditions. However, there are many additional aspects to practice self-control that can influence the individual and their behavior. For example, when it comes to learning motor skills, we often rely on the coach or teacher to organize the practice session and provide us with guidance on how to practice. In this case, for example, a basketball jump shot. This may include the coach prescribing how many shots to take or hanggang saan gagawin. The coach here provide demonstration of proper form and maybe providing feedback. So, after all na ginagawa, in this case, the practice context is defined by the coach externally rather than the learner themselves, or tinatawag natin self-control. Second is, practice self-control allow you to improve it over time. However, self-control in a short term is limited. Focusing all of your self-control in one thing makes it more difficult to exercise your self-control on subsequent tasks throughout your day. In the short term, overuse of self-control will lead to depletion. However, in the long term, the use of self-control can strengthen and improve over time. So, do you know,
If a person have a better self-control, tend to be healthier and happier, both in the short term and in the long term.
The last part is an increased amount of practice is related to improve capabilities. However, the process of optimal learning is not clear out, so the amount, type, dose, and frequency must be individualized depending on learning capabilities. By increasing your amount of practice, it can help you to improve your skills or capabilities to do another practices. But somehow, it depends you on how you will able to achieve your amount of practice and how you'll able to learn your capabilities on different practices by learning those capabilities and skills. So for example, the characteristic of the environment where practice takes place can influence performance and learning as well as the quality of motivation experience. So there are three practices. So the first is part practice versus whole practice. The second is mental practice. The third is the specificity of practice. So the part practice versus whole practice, it, it is a skills that acquired by practicing the movement and its entirety, where areas is part of the practice that has a task to learn by practicing its components before combining them. Mental practice. So mental practice, it is the cognitive rehearsal of physical skills without movement. Because mental practice, you only visualize or you only imagine yourself going through the action but don't actually do them. You only imagine of what you will going to do, but you don't actually act this. The last is the specificity practice. It is the learning specific to the source of different information that is more likely to ensure optimal accuracy. And it is also the learning principle proposes that motor skills are specific and only superficially resemble other skills or variation of the same skills.
So modeling refers to the process of carrying out other person's activity exactly as they were. These demonstrations are effective tools to conveying information prior to as performance because they show the observer the overall movement pattern, the movement purpose, and other details that would be difficult to express in words, such as how the sub-movements are coordinated and related to one another. According to studies, the learner rapidly adopts the tactics that are used to achieve a motor skill, whether they are successful or unsuccessful. As a result, attention must be taken in selecting the model that will depict the movement, the method by which person performs the action or motor skill before having the patient copy it. Due to increased drive, competition, and social contact, this may be the advantages.
There are numerous examples that I may provide on this subject or on this topic, which is the modeling. But I chose this bunting and softball, so this bunting goes like this. In order to achieve this, first, we need to step on the batter's backs and face the pitcher. The second one is we need to catch the ball with the bat. And the last one is we need to bend our knees and also our bodies. So the head of the bat's going to be further out and we're going to be making contact and swing to the band down. So the third baseline left hand is back and the right hand is forward. So most of the coaches didn't stress enough on how important the band is to the softball game, and we need to practice and be able to perform it effectively. So showing these skills can give you a knowledge to those who wants to become a softball player in the future.
So, hi guys, my topic is all about manual guidance. Manual guidance is when a therapist possibly moves a patient learner in an effort to provide a appropriate proprioceptive feedback. But is this the best way to teach an individual how to perform a task? It goes without argument that when safety is a concern, then it is important that a therapist is close by or has their hand on the learner. But what about when learning or relearning a skill? It has been suggested that manual guidance is in a way concurrent feedback. Thus, the guidance that a therapist provides become part of the regulatory features of the task, and the participant becomes dependent on that way feedback to complete a task successfully.
Manual guidance. Well, here's the example of manual guidance. We may keep our hands on Joanne, for instance, in order to take her through a movement she will be asked to perform. To give her an idea of the movement we would like to her to produce. Yet, if manual guidance is used, the therapist should attempt to remove the physical assistance as soon as possible so the patient does not become dependent on this guidance. In addition, manual guidance is when a performer is physically guided or supported by the coach. For example, manual guidance is provided when a coach guides an athlete's arm to mimic a javelin throw, or when a coach supports a gymnast to do a backflip. Manual guidance is provided during practice rather than performance. So that's all the overall topics of Lesson 7, the Designing Motor Skills Instruction session. But before we end this video presentation, let's have a recap. That's all for today's video. Thank you for listening.